So it's my distinct honor to introduce our next keynote speaker. Robert Reich is an American political economist, professor, author, and political commentator. He was Secretary of Labor, or translation, he was Minister of Labor under President Bill Clinton from 1993 to 1997. Reich is currently Professor of Public Policy at the University of California, Berkeley. He was formerly a professor at Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government and Professor of Social and Economic Policy at the Heller School for Social Policy and Management at Brandeis University. And for those of you that don't know or haven't seen it, Secretary, Professor, Dr. Reich is also a movie star. You have to check out the film, Inequality for All, in which he is a star. Please join me in welcoming Professor, Dr., former Minister of Labor, Robert Reich.
Thank you. How much time, Valerie? Well, thank you very much, and I'm delighted to be here. I want to congratulate the organizers of this conference, Armin and Bo and Ben and others of you. I've been to many policy conferences. I don't think I've ever been to one where the subject was so provocative and ill-defined, and at the same time going to be on a ballot so soon and going to lose. And it's just no, I don't mean it's going to lose. Is it going to lose? What do we think? But I admire efforts to put on the table provocative and important ideas, particularly that tie together not only the future of work, but also what technology is doing to us, and also the options we have as people who organize markets. And this is a very basic point. Can I just emphasize this for a moment? We tend, in our conversations, to assume that over here is the free market, and that's sort of the state of nature. That's what exists. And then over here is government. And we tend not to understand that you can't have a free market without government defining what it is, what property and contract and liability and bankruptcy and all of the ways in which markets actually are organized. And on top of that, dealing with all the externalities, the positive externalities, such as research, basic research, and education and infrastructure, and the negative externalities, such as pollution. The idea that you can have a market without government is, to me, absolutely ludicrous. The central question is, who is government working for? And who is organizing the basic rules of the markets? And how and who has the influence and power? So what I'm going to say has something to do with power. Let's begin with technology. This conference has, I think we can stipulate, that technology is having a huge impact, and it's a very positive impact in many, many ways. I mean, you look at all of the ways, this morning we were talking about the marginal cost, the zero marginal cost, and the infinite ways in which technology can be used. And look at big data and artificial intelligence, and at the same time look at the ways in which you have voice transmission and translation and large systems for pattern recognition. Put it all together, and you see that jobs are being displaced. I come from the United States. The United States is, for many of you, home, but for many of you, it is not home. It is sort of the future. It's the direction in which capitalism is moving, and in many respects, the technology is providing all sorts of options for us. And I don't want to sound like a neo-Luddite. I think we have to be very careful not to be neo-Luddites here. Faster, better, cheaper. There is and if you look at the health sciences, stem cell research, the biological sciences, it is also a wonderful combination of possibilities over the next 10, 15, 20 years. But there are things we need to take account of. One consequence is widening inequality. Widening inequality of income and wealth and political power. Now, how do I get from technology to widening income? In widening inequality? I get there for a very simple process, because the technologies that we are seeing coming on stream are technologies that generate huge returns to their owners and inventors. If you are lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time, many of them are monopolies over networks, generating even bigger returns for the owners and inventors. But at the same time, they are displacing a lot of people. The driverless car combined with Uber, something in the order in the United States of 4.5 million people are going to be losing their jobs. Amazon is in many ways a boon to consumers, but Amazon is displacing huge numbers and will continue to displace huge numbers of retail workers. And if Amazon is successful at delivering by drone, same-day delivery, I'm not sure I want to get my things delivered by drone. But even if I did, that's going to get rid of an awful lot of jobs in terms of warehousing and also transportation. And at the same time, you've got other companies that are very, very actively, one of their purposes is to drive down costs. And what is the biggest cost to most companies? It is labor. And so you are, by definition, as you drive down costs, you are driving down not only the number of jobs, but you're driving down wages. In the United States today, now the United States economy, I don't have to tell you, is among all advanced economies right now the most successful in terms of low unemployment and growth. Not great, but the growth is very, very good. But the United States, we have an economy in which the labor participation rate is at the lowest, almost as low as it's been in 40 years, when large numbers of wives and mothers began entering the workforce. We have a median household income adjusted for inflation that is below what it was in the year 2000. Technology and globalization are driving this, technology more than globalization, and technology isn't just getting rid of jobs. That would be a mistake, and I think that some of the people this morning who said that technology are not getting rid of jobs, they are absolutely right. Technology is actually pushing more and more people into the personal service sector of the economy. And much of that personal service sector of the economy is personal attention. Retail, restaurant, hotel, hospital, surface transportation, child care, elder care, all therapy, physical therapy, all kinds of things that require the essence of what is provided is personal attention. Technology can't do it. Robots can't do it. There are going to be a lot of jobs in the personal attention economy. There's no limit. The need and desire for personal attention is almost insatiable. But the problem is that you've got a lot of supply of people who are moving into the personal attention sector of the economy. The demand is going to be limited, and so that the wages are inevitably dropping. And so you see, the owners and inventors of the technologies that are in the right place at the right time, they're getting huge returns, and you've got more and more people being pushed out of the middle class into the personal service sector of the economy, getting lower and lower wages, and so the net result is your middle class is effectively shrinking. What's the problem there? Well, the problem there is that, number one, you've got an aggregate demand problem. In the United States, 70% of economic activity is driven by consumer spending. The rich spend only a tiny proportion of what they earn. It's the middle class and the poor who spend everything. But if you have a shrinking middle class, you are not going to have enough aggregate demand. I was visited months ago by the CEO of a big high-tech company on the peninsula that will go nameless, starts with a G, and he was concerned about inequality, and I asked him, after spending an hour talking about it, why are you so concerned? And the answer was, we, that is my company and I, we're making so many labor-replacing technologies, I'm worried about who's going to be able to buy all of this in the future. I mean, if you just do a mental experiment, let's say I had a little gadget in my hand, I called it an eye everything. And my eye everything was capable of sort of a modern Aladdin's lamp. My everything was capable of producing whatever I wanted. I just would say it. And through 3D manufacturing and everything else, poof, it would be right there. It would be extraordinary. The only problem with the everything is that nobody will be able to buy it, because nobody will be able to afford it, because everybody's job will pay so little. Do you see the problem? The aggregate demand problem is a real problem. We're already suffering from that problem. But there's a second big problem that goes with inequality, and that is political instability. Guy mentioned this morning, Donald Trump. Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders in the United States didn't come from nowhere. Donald Trump is kind of the authoritarian populist wing, and Bernie Sanders is the democratic reform populist wing. The establishment political parties in the United States don't know what hit them. They don't know. They just, in fact, if you talk to somebody who is in the, quote, establishment in New York or Washington, they will continue to discount, to this day, Donald Trump, even though he's going to be the Republican nominee, and Bernie Sanders, even though he won yesterday's Indiana primary and has won 18 states, but they refuse to believe that these people exist. But they do exist, and they are in different ways. They are products of an increasing frustration and anger on the part of the middle class, the working class in the United States, that they are not getting anywhere. They're working harder than ever, and they are not seeing anything. They're falling. And they're worried also, not just widening inequality, it is also increasing economic insecurity. Now, let me separate the two, because they're very often conflated, and they need to be separated. Widening inequality has its own problems, but economic insecurity is itself a big problem of the modern economy, the high-tech economy. More and more Americans, and I dare say more and more Swiss and others in advanced countries, your income is the result of what is effectively a spot auction market, where you are getting directly what the demand is for you right now. You don't have, in the United States, unions that used to, in the private sector, claim about 35% of the private sector workforce. Now, fewer than 7% of American workers are unionized. The on-demand economy, that is, independent contractors, freelancers, is now up to close to 20% of all workers, and that's probably an underestimation of how many workers are in the subcontract or contract or on-demand or freelance economy. These jobs, if you are young and well-educated, are very exciting. I mean, you can do what you want. You're your own boss. You can be an entrepreneur. But if you are older, or maybe you don't have quite as much education, you do have bills to pay, you don't know what you're going to be earning next month. 2/3 of Americans right now are working paycheck to paycheck. A larger and larger number have no idea what they're going to be earning, because the spot auction market that they are living in is not giving any predictability to them at all, and they've got expenses. They have bills to pay, they have mortgages to pay, they have utilities, they have children. They are anxious. They are seeing their incomes drop. They are seeing less and less job security. That anxiety itself is a social bad, even if it didn't result in demagogues who are, again, like Donald Trump, rearing their heads. That itself is a social bad. And so what we see is, with all the good sides of technology, we also have these problems: lack of aggregate demand, widening inequality, social frustration, and economic insecurity. Now, what's the answer to all of these? Class? Well, I'm not absolutely convinced that a guaranteed minimum or a universal basic income is the answer, but I am sure about this. I'm sure that in all of our countries, we've got to focus on how we rebuild both the middle class and also provide people a modicum of economic security without necessarily undermining the incentives that we all need. I mean, we are, when particularly conservative economists, but any economists, talk about the necessity of having incentives to work hard and to invest and to innovate. That's true. We do need to maintain those incentives. Now, would a minimum or a universal guaranteed income reduce those incentives? I don't think so. Because if you're talking about a rich economy, what are we really talking about? A rich economy aspires, I assume, that every member of that economy have a certain minimum quality of life, and also at the same time, we assume that work is not necessarily the be-all and end-all. It's certainly not work that we dislike to do. Most people in this room, I dare say, are doing work that you like. How many of you are doing work you like? All of you. I won't ask you how many of you are doing work you dislike. But the word work itself is a funny word. It embraces two very different kinds of lives. Most people in this world are not like most of you. Most people in this world are doing work that they really would rather not do, but they have to do. And can a rich country aspire to give more of its citizens the possibility of doing less of what they don't want to do and more of what they do want to do? Obviously, the answer should be, in my view, yes. In 1928, the great British economist John Maynard Keynes, in an article, really a pamphlet that I urge you to read, called The Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren, predicted that in 100 years, now this is 1928, so 100 years is 12 years from now, in 100 years, the biggest question that we will be facing will be what to do with all our leisure. The biggest challenge for our economies, for modern economies, will be the challenge of abundance. Now, John Maynard Keynes might have been a little bit too optimistic, not about technology, and not really about productivity, and not about compounded interest. What he may have been too optimistic about is our ways of viewing reality. We still, and this is certainly true of economists, but it's true of most of us, still view ourselves as if we were all in economies of scarcity. We are not. We are fortunate enough to be in economies of abundance. The central question we face, which is a political and organizational question, it is not an economic question, it is also an ethical question, is how we use that abundance. That is, how we distribute the economic gains. The central question is not any longer how we create incentives for people to generate abundance. We have incentives like mad. And having a minimum guaranteed income is not, in my humble opinion, going to dramatically reduce incentives to work. People want to work. They want to be productive. They want to maybe write music, or maybe they want to invent, or maybe they want to do something that is very deeply inspiring to them. Maybe they want to do social work, but they can't because they have got to do the kind of work they are assigned in a way because that gives them an adequate income right now. A minimum guaranteed, universal guaranteed income will free people from that. So for all of the above reasons, inequality, aggregate demand, insecurity, but also John Maynard Keynes' guarantee or his prognostication 100 years ago, I think it is worthwhile for us to debate and deliberate and think hard about a minimum universal guaranteed income. Thank you very much.
We'll take a few questions.
Time for questions?
I'm going to collect a few and have you respond. Is that okay?
Yes, okay, that'll be fine. Thank you.
So let's collect a few questions and have Professor Reich respond.
Thank you very much for this touching talk. When I recall you correctly, you said, we have a problem with money, we have a problem with money, we have a problem with money. And I know many societies that did not have this problem with money. I think of the Eskimos, and I think of the Indians, the native Indians in the United States. I think of the native people in Australia. And if I recall you correctly, it seems like money is the problem. And if we leave that out, maybe we have the solution.
Yes.
Next question.
Yeah, thanks. So I just would like to make a connection between what you just said and the technology advocates or fans right before you. So there's this German sociologist, he's called Gunnar Heinzen. Sorry if I pronounce it wrong. And he basically has discussed how youth, and basically youth who has nothing to do, has created, I mean, it's kind of a cause for revolution or political instability. And I think here people have been very adamant or very excited about all these other things that we could be doing if we wouldn't have to be forced to do the job that we don't like to do. And it seems to me that, I mean, my question would be whether you don't think that perhaps we should think thoroughly about what are these other things that we could do instead of the job. Because, I mean, if we were to give this 83%, I think somebody before your talk said that 83% of the population was unhappy with their job. So what would these people do otherwise? I mean, what would the world look like? I wonder whether this is not a question that we should be addressing as well. Well, just what are the alternatives? Because we talk about art or write music or whatever, but is that not a problem? And I want to kind of
we need you to get to the question really quickly.
All right,
Thanks.
What would be these other things that we could do? And I bring back this sociologist I just mentioned because basically not having much to do, he says, is one of the causes for revolution, and he has gathered lots of empirical evidence and so forth.
Great, thank you.
Let me respond to that. I don't think, on the basis of the research that I have seen, the empirical work that many, many people have done, I don't believe that if people have a minimum universal basic income, they will simply sit around and do nothing. Most people aren't wired that way. Most people want to do something. Now, what they do is probably going to be, quote unquote, productive in the sense that at the end of a day, there will be more of something than there was at the start of a day. Now, that productivity may take many, many forms. We measure productivity in very narrow ways. But that productivity could be in following what the old-fashioned term is a calling, a deep desire to have work that gives one meaning. Many people are artists, and they don't even know they are artists. Many people would be providing help and aid and really come to the needs and respond to the needs of many other people in ways that they cannot now do because they are at 40 or 45 or 50 hours a week. They've got to do something else. It is simply fictional, the notion that people will sit around and do nothing, particularly, and it's doubly fictional because a minimum guaranteed income, as it has been designed or suggested around the world, doesn't provide a great deal of comfort. People still will have a need or desire to supplement that minimum guarantee by doing something that resembles, quote unquote, work. So the mere fact that we scratch our heads and says, well, what are people going to have to be doing, to me is a sign of the impoverishment of our own work lives and our own imaginations. Because again, we are living in a time of extraordinary abundance in these countries, in Switzerland, in the United States.
Let's take one more question very, very quickly.
I think you are contradicting yourself, because in one way you say that people won't earn enough money. On the other hand, you say the state should give you the 2,500 francs. Now, if they don't earn money, there will be no taxes, because somebody has to pay what you're telling us. The most important people on this earth are the entrepreneurs, because the entrepreneurs give you work, so you can pay taxes, and the entrepreneurs pay also taxes. And if in Switzerland you have your system you are advocating, the entrepreneurs, because they have to pay, so have taxes, will ask themselves whether they leave Switzerland and go somewhere else. What happens now, you can see exactly in France. Also, entrepreneurs in France are leaving the country. Even managers leave France. They go to Brussels, they come to Switzerland, and the same will happen.
Question,
yeah, and the same will. So you're contradicting yourself. You're not. It's not. You're not telling the truth.
Yeah. Well,
are you contradicting yourself is the question.
Well, with all due respect, I believe that I am being completely consistent. And again, with all due respect, yes. Well, let me explain. Let me explain. Number one, the entrepreneurs. There may be millions of entrepreneurs who have never had an opportunity to be entrepreneurs because they have to have a particular job that pays them a particular amount of money, and they are insecure. We don't know, but entrepreneurialism is itself kind of stems from a certain degree of freedom. It's not just ambition, it's also a certain degree of freedom. The United States has an awful lot of entrepreneurs. Number two, I think you suffer from an illusion that somehow the job creators are businesses. Business executives don't create jobs. The job creators are customers. And if customers have money in their pockets, there is a multiplier effect connected to that money. They spend the money, and therefore they create jobs. Wealthy individuals and CEOs are not the job creators. They are the people who benefit from customers. They will grow when they have customers. They will expand. They will be successful if they have customers. But what we're seeing now is that more and more individuals, at least in the United States, don't have the money to spend to generate the aggregate demand that businesses need in order to grow. And that, I think, could be responded to through a minimum or universal guaranteed income. And third and finally, I think it very important for us to understand, all of us, that taxes are not the only means by which a universal basic income can be supported, and it doesn't necessarily mean a larger government. We have right now, at least in our system, maybe not in Switzerland, a huge amount of corporate welfare, subsidies for businesses, for agriculture, for various segments, for the pharmaceutical industry, for Wall Street. We have bailouts of Wall Street. We have all sorts of things that are going to supplement businesses. We have socialism for the rich, but we do not. Most people are in a very cruel kind of capitalism. Last year, Yahoo, one of my favorite examples, lost about $4 billion, and the CEO of Yahoo got, $36 million in compensation. Well, do you think that is entrepreneurialism? We have the illusion somehow that the private sector works wonderfully well and the government works badly. That is an illusion. We are in rich countries. The idea that you could not spend 10% of your GDP and have a minimum basic income so that everybody is brought up to a certain level of security is, to me, simply absurd. And it would do you well as well. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.